مساء الخير وأهلا بكم إلى حلقة جديدة من واشنطن أونلاين. معي أنا هدي العويس على شبكة نورث بريس. تواصل تركيا تصعيدها ضد مناطق الإدارة الذاتية في شمال شرق سوريا أمام صمت أمريكي على المناورات والمناوشات التركية للمنطقة التي تسهم في زعزعة الاستقرار. فما هي استراتيجية الرئيس جو بايدن خلال السنة القادمة؟ وما هي استراتيجية الحزب الجمهوري لشمال شرق سوريا؟ فهل الحزب الجمهوري هو فعلا الحزب الذي يؤيد الانسحاب من شمال شرق سوريا؟ هذا ما أبحثه في حلقة اليوم من واشنطن أونلاين، وضيوفي لهذه الحلقة هما السيد جيران أوزغان رئيس المركز الكردي للسلام، ينضم إلينا من العاصمة واشنطن. ابقوا معنا لمتابعة الحلقة. أهلا وسهلا بك أستاذ جيران أوزغان رئيس المركز الكردي للسلام من واشنطن. أستاذ جيران، كيف تقيمون التصعيد التركي الأخير ضد شمال شرق سوريا؟ هل هو مقدمة لعملية عسكرية جديدة؟ ماذا تقول لكم الإدارة الأمريكية؟ ماذا يقول المشرعون في الكونغرس الأمريكي عن هذا التصعيد التركي، وعن أي ردود محتملة من واشنطن؟
So I think after the elections, after Erdogan's election victory, we saw a continuation of his policies over the last few years. And as you know, the instances of air bombardments in northern Syria just haven't ceased at all. Although the Biden administration is working very hard to prevent any kind of ground operation, another invasion by the Turkish army into north and east Syria, it's finding it, I believe, very difficult to try and prevent these bombardments from the air. It doesn't seem like this is a priority for this administration. While in our discussions and our efforts, we're trying to highlight that this is as much of a problem as a ground invasion, because it does destabilize the region. It is causing civilian casualties. And we've seen before that these are generally done in preparation for a ground invasion. So unless the Biden administration takes a tougher stance against these air bombardments, then I think it's going to be very difficult reacting to a crisis in the future.
سيد أوزغان، كان معي ضيف من دمشق الأسبوع الماضي، ويبدو أن دمشق تعول على انسحاب القوات الأمريكية في عهد رئيس جمهوري قادم، قد يكون دونالد ترامب، لأنه أوفر المرشحين حظا اليوم في الحزب الجمهوري. هذه هي خطة النظام السوري لكي تنسحب أمريكا من شمال شرق سوريا. هل ترون أن الحزب الجمهوري هو فعلا الحزب الذي سيأخذ هكذا خطوة الانسحاب النهائي من شمال شرق سوريا؟
Well, I mean, that's contingent on several scenarios. Right now, it's one thing Trump winning the presidency. It's another thing the Republican Party, someone other than Trump winning the presidency. And it's an altogether separate thing if the Democrats remain in the White House. So that is a hypothetical that a lot of people, I think, are preparing for. But as you well know, Donald Trump is having a lot of difficulties right now in the US. He's just been indicted again. So his road to the White House doesn't look very clear, and by no means is it guaranteed. So if anyone is making plans or future plans on that contingency, then I think they are preparing themselves for a rude awakening. I mean, because Trump is the only name, or one of the only names in the Republican Party who is running for the White House, to maybe even not very openly, but he does believe or he would like to withdraw from Syria. But we know from his first term, even though he wanted to, he found it very difficult himself to do so. We saw this in 2019, where he had to reverse his decision. So even if Trump does make it into the White House, this isn't a policy that is generally agreed upon or accepted by the rest of the establishment. And we saw their strength in 2019 when they pushed back on the White House, in which Donald Trump himself resided at the time. He was the president, and he had to reverse course. So this is not looking very likely in the very near future, because I believe the US government across agencies sees significant interests in remaining in Syria, and for a very low cost on their part. So I don't see that policy changing in the near to midterm.
أنتم في المعهد الكردي للسلام دفعتم باتجاه تحفيز الإدارة الأمريكية، تحفيز واشنطن على لعب دور الوسيط بين تركيا وبين الكرد عموما في المنطقة، ليكون هناك تفاهم دبلوماسي ينهي حالة الصراع هذه. ولكن على ما يبدو حتى اليوم تركيا مصرة على التصعيد ضد الكرد في مناطق من العراق، وكذلك بشكل أساسي في شمال شرق سوريا. إلى أين وصلت اليوم جهودكم هذه؟ إلى أين وصلت اليوم الآمال بأن يكون هناك فعلا سلام كردي تركي؟
Well, I think the trajectory on this issue is promising compared to 5 years ago, compared to 10 years ago, compared to this since the start of the conflict between Turkey and the PKK, which is the underlying conflict for all of these issues that we have in Syria, Iraq, and obviously Turkey. There is a promising trajectory in the American establishment across agency bureaucrats and people who are working on this issue specifically have understood that the only way to stabilize Syria, the only way to stabilize Iraq, goes through solving the Kurdish question in Turkey. We've had people in government who have expressed this publicly. So that is a promising sign. Now, whether the US at this point would expend any political capital to actually push for a dialogue or some sort of a peaceful resolution between Turkey and the PKK is still up for debate. And as you said, we work on this tirelessly, because we do believe that it's in the interests of all parties concerned for the conflict between Turkey and the PKK to be resolved peacefully. This is a conflict that's gone on for almost 5 decades now, and while up until about 2010, this was a conflict that was mainly constricted to within the borders of Turkey. Now the conflict itself has wider regional implications, if not global implications. So this has definitely attracted more US attention. And I think that the atmosphere is ripe now for the US to engage much more directly, and not just via Syria or Iraq, but directly through its Turkish channels, directly between the US and Turkey. There are other things on the table, such as Sweden's NATO accession, that this conflict itself is having an impact on. So I believe the recipe is there for all responsible and rational global actors to come together and push for a solution to the Kurdish question inside Turkey once and for all.
على أرض الواقع سيد أوزغان، في حال انسحبت فعلا الولايات المتحدة، سحبت قواتها من شمال شرق سوريا، هل تمتلك اليوم الإدارة الذاتية وقوات سوريا الديمقراطية المؤهلات السياسية التي تسمح لها بالتعامل مع كل التحديات المحيطة، التحدي التركي، تحدي إيران وروسيا، وكذلك قوات النظام السوري المتواجدة في المنطقة؟
I mean, to be realistic, I think it would be very difficult. We're talking about a very rough neighborhood. And although the Syrian government and its military has shown that it is not the most coherent force, politically or militarily, and is rather unable to maintain security in the whole country. But just to the north of the border, where the SDF and the autonomous administration in North and East Syria hold territory and actually govern, just to the north of them is NATO's second biggest army, which is Turkey. So it would be very, very difficult for the SDF to try and defend its territory against the Turkish military. However, saying that, any kind of conflict that can start in that region is, to be sure, is going to be bloody because the SDF have already had experiences in the past, have by and large stood their ground. And it does seem that they are more prepared for a Turkish attack than they previously were. So even if they are unlikely to be able to stave off or defend their territory against an invasion by NATO's second biggest army alone. I believe that the political dynamics that are in force in the region right now will prevent a total Turkish overrunning of north and east Syria.
هل لا يزال هناك إمكانية لتطوير العلاقة السياسية بين واشنطن ومنطقة الإدارة الذاتية، مؤسسات الإدارة الذاتية، ليكون هناك استدامة للعلاقة والتواصل الدبلوماسي حتى في حال انتهت العلاقة العسكرية؟
Absolutely. I mean, the US and Israel, they have interests in the region that go beyond just the US-Kurdish relationship. And as I said just earlier, a few minutes ago, this relationship with the SDF and the SDC, it still has a lot of room to grow because in the grand scheme of things, relatively speaking, this relationship has been very cost effective for the US, both in terms of American lives, but also American treasure. I mean, it doesn't cost very much. The relationship doesn't cost the American taxpayer or the American government very much, and yet they're able to yield significant results just by their presence and their relationship with the SDC and SDF. The US and Israel has an interest in pushing back against Iran in the region. Russia's influence can be curtailed with an American presence, and also the ultimate resolution in Syria through the Kurds and through the SDF and SDC. The West, and by the West I actually mean the US more than anyone else, has a say in how the Syrian conflict that's gone on for more than 10 years now is resolved. So I believe that there is this relationship between the SDC, the SDF, and the US can be more of a political relationship going forward than it is right now for these very reasons.
شكرا جزيلا لك ضيفي السيد جيران أوزغان، كنت معنا من واشنطن. وختاما شكرا لكل من تابع حلقة اليوم من واشنطن أونلاين. ألقاكم في حلقة جديدة الأسبوع المقبل، إلى اللقاء.